How could a man who was so smart, so charming, and seemed so normal turn out to be one of the most brutal serial killers in American history? That's the terrifying question at the very heart of the Ted Bundy paradox. And in this explainer, we're going to unpack the story of the man who completely shattered every stereotype of what a monster looks like, and figure out how he hid his darkness right out in the open.
I mean, just look at this. This slide really captures the mind-bending reality of his two lives. On one side, you have his public face, a good-looking law student, a guy with political ambitions, someone who even volunteered at a crisis hotline, talking people out of suicide. But then, there's the other side, the private reality, a sociopath. And when we say that, we mean someone with zero empathy, no conscience, a person who saw other people as just objects, a predator who hunted at night and murdered dozens of.
So the big question is, how did he do it? How did he pull it off? Well, now we're going to break down the mechanics of his deception, how he manipulated absolutely everyone, from friends and family to the police, to hide who he really was for years.
To really understand the man, you've got to go back, right back to the beginning, because his entire psychology was shaped by a fundamental lie. Let's dig into how this all started in his earliest days.
Okay, get this. This is the core lie of his childhood. He was born to an unwed mother back in the 1940s, and that was a huge social stigma. So to avoid the scandal, his grandparents raised him. And they told everyone, including Ted himself, that his mother was actually his older sister.
Can you imagine finding that out? It's believed that when Bundy finally discovered the truth, it created this deep, burning resentment toward his mother. And as this quote suggests, psychologists think this incredible betrayal by the most important female figure in his life might have been what planted the seeds for his deep-seated hatred of women, a hatred that would fuel his crimes.
And this feeling of being built on a lie, well, it fueled a personality that was all about pretending. He looked down on his kind, hardworking stepfather, thinking he was crude and just beneath him. He taught himself to be a chameleon, you know? He learned to copy the wealthy and powerful people around him. He got so obsessed with status that he would literally shoplift expensive things just to keep up this illusion of success.
So this obsession with image and status was on a collision course with a very important relationship in his life, one that many criminal profilers believe was the main trigger for his explosion of violent rage. This is just chillingly methodical. First, he gets rejected by a woman named Diane Edwards, who he completely idolized because she came from wealth and status. She basically told him he was immature and going nowhere. So what does he do? He spends years literally transforming himself into her ideal man. He crushes it in law school, gets involved in politics. But here's the twisted part, the whole end game. He wins her back, makes her think they have a future together, and then he just cuts her off. Cold. It was a perfectly calculated act of psychological revenge.
And once he had that perfect revenge, it seems like a switch just flipped. That need to control and dominate women went from psychological games to murder. 1974, the Pacific Northwest. This is when his documented killing spree began, and a terrifyingly clear pattern started to emerge.
And this right here shows his sinister genius, his method, his MO. It wasn't just about brute force, it was about manipulation. He weaponized empathy. Just think about that for a second. He'd fake an injury, put his arm in a sling, use crutches, and then ask for help. He turned one of our best human instincts, our desire to help someone in need, into a deadly trap.
And here's his hunting method laid out plain and simple. His tactics were always the same: fake an injury or pretend to be an authority figure. His tools were just as consistent: that unremarkable tan Volkswagen Beetle, a crowbar, and handcuffs. And his targets, overwhelmingly, they were college students who all shared a disturbing similarity: long, dark hair parted right down the middle, just like Diane Edwards.
His confidence just grew and grew until it was absolutely off the charts. On July 14, 1974, at Lake Sammamish, we're talking a crowded public park in the middle of a sunny day, he decided to put his method to the ultimate test. He abducted 2 women that afternoon. Not 1, 2. Janice Ott and Denise Naslund. Both disappeared from a packed beach in broad daylight just hours apart. The sheer audacity, it's just hard to wrap your head around.
And this is what is so incredibly frustrating. The police had all the clues they needed. Multiple witnesses told them the guy's first name was Ted. They gave a perfect description of his very distinctive car, and get this, his own girlfriend at the time, Elizabeth Kloperver, even called the police to report that she suspected him.
Which brings us to the most critical question of all. With all of these tips pointing directly at Ted Bundy, why on earth was he still free to keep on killing for so long?
And here's the unbelievable answer. Law enforcement got thousands of tips, but they kept dismissing the ones about Bundy. Why? Because the clean-cut, ambitious law student just didn't fit their picture of what a vicious murderer was supposed to look like. We all have a bias towards believing what we see, and that includes the police. He didn't look the part, so we got a pass. His mask of normalcy was his single greatest weapon.
But that mask he wore so well, it was about to slip. He moved to Utah to get away from the growing suspicion back in Washington, and that's where Bundy finally made a critical mistake, a mistake that would ultimately be his downfall. He used this exact line to try and lure 18-year-old Carol DeRonch from a shopping mall. He's pretending to be a police officer, a figure you're supposed to trust. It was a classic Bundy move, preying on a victim's natural instinct to cooperate with authority.
See, up until this moment, Bundy had been in complete control of the narrative of his victims, but this time was different. So what happens when the prey turns into a fighter?
Carol DeRonch fought for her life. When Bundy tried to slap the handcuffs on her, she fought back. She managed to get the car door open and she escaped. Her incredible bravery changed everything. For the very first time, the police had more than just clues. They had a living, breathing survivor who could look Ted Bundy in the face and say, that was him.
Her testimony was the absolute key. It was the living proof that connected the M.O. from Washington to the suspect in Utah. All the pieces, the name Ted, the VW bug, the fake cast, and now a survivor's positive ID, they all finally snapped into place. The hunt for Ted Bundy was almost over.
So we're left right back where we started with this paradox. Ted Bundy taught the world a truly horrifying lesson. Evil doesn't always have fangs and claws. Sometimes it has a law degree and a winning smile. And that leaves all of us with a deeply unsettling question, doesn't it? How many other monsters are out there, walking among us, hidden perfectly behind their own masks of normalcy?